Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the center of the massive chamber, her blue uniform looking small against the towering walls that stretched up into darkness. The air felt thick and strange, filled with gases that the alien species needed to breathe. Her breathing mask felt heavy on her face as she looked up at the beings that would decide humanity's fate, the Galactic Council chamber was unlike anything on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. Floating platforms held the different alien representatives, each one more strange than the last. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms. Others were just balls of glowing energy that hurt to look at directly. A few looked almost human, but their skin was gray and their eyes were too large. Sarah had been chosen to speak for all of humanity. She was not the first choice. That honor had gone to President Martinez, but the Council had rejected him. They said humans could only send military representatives because they were too dangerous for civilian contact. Sarah thought that was stupid, but she had learned not to argue with beings who could destroy entire star systems. The leader of the Council was something called a Zephrian. It looked like a 10-foot-tall statue made of blue crystal, but it moved and spoke like a living thing. When it talked, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Next to it floated an arbiter, one of the ancient energy beings that had helped create the Council thousands of years ago. The arbiter looked like a small sun, but cold and angry. "The verdict has been reached," the Zephrian announced. Its voice echoed through the chamber in a way that made Sarah's bones ache. The species known as humanity has been found guilty of the following crimes against galactic peace. Sarah's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had heard these charges before, but they still made her angry. The Council thought humans were criminals just for being human. First, the Zephrian continued, aggressive expansion without Council approval. The human species has established colonies on 47 worlds without seeking permission from the proper authorities. Sarah wanted to shout that those worlds had been empty, no one lived there. Humans had found dead planets and brought them to life with their technology and hard work, but the Council said that did not matter. Every planet in the galaxy belonged to them, even the empty ones. Second, refusal to submit to Council oversight and control. When offered the chance to join the galactic community, humanity demanded to keep their independence and self-rule. This charge hurt the most because it was true. When the Council had first contacted Earth 50 years ago, they had offered humanity a place in galactic civilization. But the price was giving up everything that made them human. They would have to change their government, their culture, and even their way of thinking to match what the Council wanted. Humans had said no. Third, the dangerous practice of individual thought and unpredictable behavior. The human species refuses to adopt proper social structures and continues to encourage chaos and disorder among its population. Sarah almost laughed at this one. The Council was afraid because humans did not all think the same way. They were scared because humans could change their minds and come up with new ideas. The other alien species in the Council all thought alike. They had given up their individual thoughts long ago to become part of larger group minds. They found human creativity terrifying. "The penalty for these crimes is exile," the Zephrian declared. "The human species will withdraw all colonies, military forces and installations to beyond the heliopause of their home star system. They have 72 standard hours to comply." Sarah felt her heart sink. The heliopause was the edge of their solar system, the place where the sun's influence ended and empty space began. The Council was forcing humanity back to just Earth, and the few planets around their sun. All the colonies they had built, all the new worlds they had made into homes, would be lost. "Admiral Chun," the arbiter spoke for the first time. Its voice sounded like electricity crackling through her brain. "Do you understand the verdict?" Sarah straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the ball of energy. "I understand that you are afraid of us," she said clearly. "I understand that you want to cage us because we refuse to become like you." A wave of anger rippled through the chamber. Several of the alien representatives made sounds of shock and displeasure. The Colliery, a species that looked like a cross between ants and spiders chittered angrily in their hive language. "Humanity's response proves our point," the Zephrian said coldly. "Even now, facing exile, they show defiance and aggression. This confirms that they cannot be trusted with freedom in civilized space." Sarah wanted to say more, but the other human delegates behind her were signaling for her to stop. They were right. Nothing she said would change the Council's mind. They had already decided humanity's fate before this trial even began. "The quarantine field will be activated once all human forces have withdrawn," the Arbiter announced. "This barrier will prevent any human vessel from leaving their star system. It will remain in place permanently." Now Sarah did laugh, a short bitter sound. "A prison," she said. "You are building us a prison." "A necessary precaution," the Zephrian replied. "Humanity has proven they cannot be trusted with faster-than-light travel. The quarantine field will ensure galactic peace." The trial was over. Sarah and the other human delegates were escorted out of the chamber by floating robot guards. As they walked through the corridors of the Council Station, Sarah could see alien beings watching them through windows and doorways. Some looked curious, others afraid. A few seemed almost sad. The human transport ship was waiting at the docking bay. It was a small, ugly vessel compared to the sleek alien ships around it, but it was home. As Sarah climbed aboard, she found the rest of her team already strapping themselves in for the journey back to Earth. "Well, that went about as well as expected," said Commander Torres, Sarah's second in command. He was trying to sound casual, but she could hear the worry in his voice. "They were never going to change their minds," Sarah replied, settling into her seat. "This whole trial was just for show. They decided to exile us the moment we refused to join them 50 years ago." Dr. Kim, the team science advisor, looked up from his datapad. "Sarah, there's something you need to know." "Our sensors picked up some unusual readings from the Council Station's power core. They are already building the quarantine field generators." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "How long before it is ready?" "Based on the energy patterns, maybe a week, 2 at most." The ship began to move away from the station, heading for the jump point that would take them back to human space. Sarah looked out the window at the massive alien structure growing smaller behind them. It was built into an asteroid and covered with lights and antennae. Ships from dozens of different species came and went from its docking bays. It was the center of galactic civilization, and humanity was being kicked out forever. "They think they know us," Sarah said quietly. "They think they understand what humans are capable of." Commander Torres looked at her with concern. "Sarah, what are you thinking?" Sarah smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "I am thinking that they have made a mistake. They see our independence as a weakness. They see our refusal to conform as a flaw. But those are the very things that make us strong." Dr. Kim leaned forward in his seat. "The Council species have been stable for thousands of years. They do not change or adapt. They follow the same patterns their ancestors did. But humans ... humans adapt," Sarah finished. "We change. We find new ways to solve problems. We refuse to give up." The ship reached the jump point and prepared to enter faster-than-light travel. In a few hours, they would be back in human space, bearing news of their exile. Sarah knew there would be panic. Some people would want to fight. Others would want to surrender and accept the Council's terms. But she had a feeling that most humans would react the same way she was reacting now. They would get angry. "Commander Torres," Sarah said as the ship jumped into hyperspace, "when we get back to Earth, I want you to send a message to all the colony worlds. Tell them what happened here. Tell them about the quarantine field." "What should I tell them to do?" Sarah's smile became more genuine. "Tell them to get ready. The Council thinks they can cage humanity. They are about to learn that humans do not stay caged for long." The ship flew through the strange colors of hyperspace, carrying its passengers back to a solar system that would soon become a prison. But prisons only worked if the prisoners accepted their bars, and humanity had never been good at accepting. Limitations. Behind them, the Council Station continued its work. building a barrier that they believed would contain the human threat forever. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Humanity was about to show them what happened when you tried to cage a species that had spent their entire existence breaking free from every limitation they encountered. The Council wanted peace and order. They were about to get chaos and revolution instead, and it would all start with a single stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in zero gravity inside the hidden laboratory, her dark hair drifting around her face as she studied the holographic equations spinning in front of her. The lab was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid beyond Neptune, far from any shipping lanes or patrol routes. It had taken 3 years to build in secret, and now it might be humanity's only hope. Elena had been working on the quantum field problem for months before the Council's trial. She knew this day would come. The signs had been there for anyone smart enough to read them. The Council's increasing demands, their obvious fear of human expansion, their refusal to treat humanity as equals. Elena had started preparing for exile before the word was ever spoken. "Doctor, we are getting the signal from Earth," called her assistant. Marcus Webb, he was young and brilliant, one of the few people who understood her theories about faster-than-light travel. Admiral Chun's message just came through. Elena pushed herself over to the communication station and activated the recording. Sarah Chun's voice filled the small lab, calm but angry as she described the trial and the Council's verdict. When she mentioned the quarantine field, Elena felt her stomach tighten. "A quantum barrier?" Elena said to herself. "They are going to trap us using our own sun's gravity well as an anchor point." Marcus looked confused. "How do you know that?" Elena pointed to one of her equation displays. "Because I have been studying their technology for years. The Council uses quantum field manipulation for everything. Their ships, their weapons, their communication systems, all of it is based on the same principle." She pulled up another set of calculations, these ones marked with red warning symbols. "I have been trying to figure out how to break through their defenses. The problem is that their technology is thousands of years more advanced than ours." "But you found something," Marcus said. It was not a question. He had worked with Elena long enough to recognize the look in her eyes. When she had solved a difficult problem, Elena smiled for the first time in weeks. "I found their weakness. The Council species are all very old and very stable. They have been using the same technology for centuries without changing it. They trust their systems completely." She manipulated the hologram to show a complex three-dimensional model of quantum field interactions. "But they made one mistake. Their field generators create a specific resonance pattern. If you know that pattern, you can create a counter-frequency that disrupts the entire field." Marcus stared at the model, trying to understand what she was showing him. "You mean we can break through their barriers?" "More than that," Elena said excitedly. "We can turn their own technology against them. But first we need to get samples of their field generators and quantum cores. We need to study them up close." Before Marcus could respond, another voice cut through the lab. "That is exactly what we plan to do." Elena spun around to see a man in a military uniform floating near the lab's entrance. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of scars that came from real combat. She recognized him from the military briefings she had attended. Captain Marcus Rodriguez, though everyone called him Tank because of his habit of charging straight through enemy defenses. "Captain Rodriguez," Elena said carefully. "How did you find this lab?" Tank smiled grimly. "Doctor, there are 47 human colony worlds that are supposed to evacuate in the next 60 hours. Do you really think we are all just going to pack up and leave?" Elena felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. "You are not evacuating?" "Hell no," Tank said bluntly. "About half the colonies have agreed to go dark. We are cutting all official communications with Earth and the Council. As far as anyone knows, we are evacuating like good little humans. But really, we are going underground." Marcus looked excited. "An underground resistance?" Tank nodded. "We have been preparing for this for months. Some of us saw the writing on the wall after the Council started making demands last year. We have been stockpiling supplies, modifying civilian ships, and training volunteers. Elena's mind raced with possibilities. Captain, if you can get me access to Council technology, I think I can give you weapons they will never expect. What kind of weapons? Elena gestured to her equations. The kind that turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The Council species all think alike because they have given up individual thought. They share group minds and follow rigid patterns. That makes them predictable. She pulled up another display showing human brain scan patterns. But humans are different. We think as individuals. We can change our minds, adapt to new situations, and come up with solutions that no one expects. The Council sees this as a flaw, but it is actually our biggest advantage. Tank was starting to look interested. Go on. Their technology is designed to work with predictable, stable thought patterns. But what if we could create technology that worked with human unpredictability instead? What if we could build weapons and defenses that got stronger the more chaotic the situation became? Marcus was nodding excitedly. Adaptive systems that learn and change in real time. Exactly, Elena sighed. But I need samples of their technology to make it work. I need to understand how their quantum fields interact with biological thought patterns. Tank was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he smiled. Doctor, I think we can help each other. I need someone who understands alien technology to help plan our raids. You need alien technology to study. It sounds like a perfect partnership. Elena felt a thrill of excitement and terror. She was a scientist, not a soldier. But the Council had made this personal when they decided to cage humanity like animals. What do you need me to do? First, I need you to identify the best targets. Which Council installations have the technology you need? Elena accessed her database of Council facilities. She had been studying their infrastructure for years, trying to understand how their empire worked. There are several possibilities. The colliery manufacturing world of Nexus Prime produces most of their quantum cores. The Zephrian research station at Pulsar 779 studies dimensional manipulation technology. What about their military bases? Elena highlighted several locations on a star map. The Council keeps their most advanced weapons at the fortress world of Granite Shield. But that place is heavily defended. It would be almost impossible to infiltrate. Tank studied the map carefully. Almost impossible is not the same as impossible. But let's start with easier targets first. Tell me about this Nexus Prime place. Elena pulled up detailed files on the colliery homeworld. Nexus Prime is the center of colliery manufacturing. The entire planet is one big factory complex. They produce everything from simple tools to the most advanced quantum computers in the galaxy. What makes it special? The colliery are a hive mind species. They think and work as one giant organism. That makes them incredibly efficient at manufacturing, but it also makes them predictable. They follow the same patterns every day, the same schedules, the same security procedures. Marcus was looking at the facility schematics. It looks like they do not expect attacks from inside their own territory. Their security is designed to keep people out, not to stop infiltrators who are already inside. Tank nodded slowly. And with the right disguises and stolen identification, we could get inside. Elena felt her heart racing. Captain, you are talking about a mission deep into Council space. The risks are enormous. Doctor, the Council just sentenced our entire species to permanent imprisonment. I think the situation calls for enormous risks. Elena looked at her equations again, thinking about the possibilities. If they could steal Council technology and adapt it for human use, they might have a chance. But it would require perfect timing, incredible luck, and the kind of desperate courage that only humans seem to possess. There is something else you need to know, Elena said slowly. While I was studying Council technology, I found some disturbing information in their historical databases. Tank and Marcus both looked at her with concern. The Council is not the First Galactic Empire. They have done this before many times. Over the past 10,000 years, they have encountered dozens of species like us. Independent civilizations that refuse to submit to Council authority. What happened to them? Marcus asked, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. They were all destroyed or absorbed. The Council would offer them membership, with impossible conditions. When they refused, they would be declared threats to galactic peace. Then the Council would either wipe them out completely or force them to give up everything that made them unique. Tank's expression grew dark. So, this is not really about keeping the peace. This is about control. Elena nodded. The Council fears diversity because diversity leads to change, and change threatens their power. They want a galaxy where everyone thinks the same way, follows the same rules, and never questions authority. But they made a mistake with us. Marcus said quietly, "What mistake?" Tank asked. Elena smiled grimly. "They gave us 72 hours to evacuate. That is enough time to warn all the colonies, coordinate a resistance, and start stealing their technology. If they had attacked immediately, they might have won. But they tried to be fair and civilized." Tank laughed, a harsh sound in the small lab. "They do not understand that fairness and civilization are human concepts. We invented them. And we know how to break the rules we created." Elena made her decision. "Captain, I'm with you. Tell me what you need." Tank's smile was fierce and determined. "I need you to identify every piece of Council technology that we can steal, study, or sabotage. I need to know their weaknesses, their blind spots, and their fears. And then we are going to show the Council what happens when you try to cage a species that conquered its own planet through pure stubbornness. They think they know humans. They are about to learn that they do not know anything at all." Elena looked out through the lab's small window at the distant stars. Somewhere out there, the Council was building a prison for humanity. But they had made one crucial error. They had assumed that humans would accept their fate quietly. The Council was about to discover that humanity's greatest weakness was also their greatest strength. They did not know how to give up. They had never learned how to accept defeat. And now they were about to turn that stubborn refusal into a weapon that could shake the foundations of the galaxy. The resistance was born in that moment, in a hidden lab beyond Neptune, between a desperate scientist and a determined soldier. It would grow into something the Council had never faced before, an enemy that got stronger every time they tried to destroy it. The 72-hour countdown had begun. But instead of preparing for exile, humanity was preparing for war. Captain Tank Rodriguez floated in the cargo hold of the disguised freighter, checking his equipment one final time. The ship looked like a typical colliery transport from the outside, complete with the insect-like hull modifications that the hive mind species preferred. But inside, it was packed with the most advanced human technology they could build in secret. Tank's team consisted of 12 volunteers, all veterans of the Outer Rim conflicts. They had trained for this mission for 3 weeks, ever since Dr. Vasquez had identified Nexus Prime as their primary target. Each team member wore biosuits that would change their appearance to look like different alien species. The technology was stolen from a Council medical station, then improved by human engineers who specialized in making the impossible work. 5 minutes to insertion, called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the pilot's seat. She was Tank's best pilot, capable of flying anything with engines. More importantly, she could think fast under pressure, a skill they would need today. Tank activated his comm unit. "Dr. Vasquez, are you ready on your end?" Elena's voice came through clearly from the Zephrian research station orbiting Pulsar. 779 over 400 light-years away. Team 2 is in position. We have successfully infiltrated the station and are moving toward the dimensional manipulation labs. Tank felt a mixture of pride and worry. Elena had insisted on leading the second team personally, despite having no military training. But she was the only one who truly understood what they were looking for. The Zephrian research station contained the mathematical principles behind their dimensional technology, information that could not be stolen by force alone. "Remember, we only have 6 hours before the shift change," Tank reminded both teams. "The colliery may be predictable, but they are not stupid. If we take too long, they will notice something is wrong." The freighter dropped out of hyperspace near Nexus Prime. Tank looked through the porthole at the colliery homeworld below. The entire planet looked like a massive machine, covered in factory complexes and manufacturing centers that stretched. From pole to pole, streams of ships moved in perfectly organized patterns, carrying raw materials in and finished products out. "Traffic control is contacting us," Sarah reported. "They want to know our cargo manifest and destination." Tank listened. As Sarah responded in perfect colliery hive speak, the clicking and chittering language that the insect-like aliens used to communicate, she claimed to be carrying a shipment of rare metals for the quantum core production facility in the planet's northern hemisphere. "Cleared for landing," Sarah announced. "They are directing us to Docking Bay 77 Alpha." As the ship descended, through the atmosphere, Tank could see the incredible scale of colliery manufacturing. Every surface of the planet was covered with geometric structures that pulsed with energy. Conveyor systems moved materials between buildings in flowing streams. That looked almost organic. It was beautiful in an alien way, but also terrifying. This was what the Council offered to other species: perfect efficiency. In exchange for individual thought, the ship landed with a soft thud. Tank felt the artificial gravity kick in as the engines shut down. Through the walls, he could hear the mechanical sounds of the docking bay, robotic arms moving cargo, atmospheric processors cleaning the air, and the constant clicking of colliery communication. "Biosuits active," Tank ordered. He felt a strange sensation as his appearance changed. The suit used holographic projectors and biomimetic gel to make him look like a hegemony trader, one of the gray-skinned humanoid species that served as merchants throughout Council space. One by one, his team transformed. Some became colliery workers. Others took on the appearance of various alien species that commonly visited Nexus Prime. The suits were not perfect, but they would pass casual inspection. Tank checked his equipment pack. Hidden inside what looked like standard trader tools were human-made scanners, data storage devices, and a few special weapons that Elena had designed. The weapons looked like harmless maintenance tools, but they could disrupt colliery electronics and cause temporary paralysis in biological targets. "Team Alpha, move out," Tank ordered. They left the ship and entered the docking bay. Tank was struck immediately by the overwhelming sensory input. The air smelled of ozone and industrial chemicals. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent displays showing production schedules and shipping information. And everywhere, colliery workers moved in perfect synchronization. Like parts of a vast machine, the colliery workers paid no attention to the new arrivals. Tank had been counting on this. In a hive mind society, individual awareness was reduced. Unless something directly threatened the collective, it was simply ignored. Tank's team split up according to plan. 6 of them would create diversions in different parts of the facility, while Tank and the remaining 5 headed for the Quantum Core Production Center. They had studied the facility layout for weeks, memorizing every corridor and security checkpoint. The walk to the production center took 20 minutes. Tank was amazed by what he saw along the way. Colliery workers moved through the corridors in flowing patterns, never bumping into each other, never wasting motion. They worked on complex machinery, with perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind controlling dozens of bodies. But Tank also noticed something else. The colliery security systems were designed to detect external threats, not internal ones. There were scanners at the entrance points, but very few cameras or sensors inside the facility itself. The hive mind assumed that anyone inside must belong. They reached the Quantum Core Production Center without incident. Tank used his stolen access codes to open the security doors. The codes had been provided by a colliery defector, one of the rare individuals who had somehow broken free from the hive mind. Such beings were considered insane by their own species, but they occasionally sought asylum with other civilizations inside. The production center, Tank felt his breath catch. The room was enormous, filled with machinery that defied easy description. Massive quantum field generators hung from the ceiling like technological stalactites. Robot workers moved between them, assembling the quantum cores that powered Council starships and installations. Target acquired, Tank whispered into his comm. Beginning data collection. His team spread out through the facility, using Elena's specially designed scanners to record everything. The devices looked like standard inspection tools, but they were actually copying the quantum field patterns and mathematical equations that made the technology work. Meanwhile, Tank focused on the central control console. According to Elena's briefings, the system contained the master templates for all Colliery quantum technology. If they could steal this data, human scientists would be able to reverse engineer generations of alien advancement in a matter of months. Tank connected Elena's data storage device to the console. The device was designed to look like a standard diagnostic tool, but it was actually one of the most advanced computers humanity had ever built. It began copying terabytes of information while Tank watched the progress bar crawl forward. Team. Leader, we have a problem, came Sarah's voice through his earpiece. Colliery security is responding to some kind of disturbance in Section C. They are increasing patrols throughout the facility. Tank felt his heart rate spike. How long until they reach us? Maybe 10 minutes if we are lucky. Tank looked at the progress bar. Only 60% complete. They needed more time. Activate contingency plan, Tank ordered. All diversion teams? Start your secondary protocols now? Throughout the facility, Tank's people began creating carefully planned disruptions. They triggered false alarms in the shipping bays, caused minor equipment malfunctions in the processing centers, and started small fires in the waste management systems. None of the incidents were serious enough to threaten the facility, but they were scattered enough to confuse the Colliery response teams. The progress bar reached 80%, then 90%. Tank could hear the clicking sounds of Colliery communication. Getting closer as security teams searched the nearby sections, 95%. 98%. Team leader, they are right outside, whispered one of his people, 100%. Tank disconnected the device and signaled his team to begin withdrawal. They had done it. They had stolen the complete technical specifications for Colliery quantum technology, but getting out would be harder than getting in. As Tank's team moved toward the exit, they encountered a Colliery security patrol in the main corridor. The insect-like beings stopped and began clicking rapidly at each other, their compound eyes studying the humans' disguises. Tank held his breath. Their biosuits were good, but not perfect. If the Colliery looked too closely, then one of Tank's people did something brilliant. Corporal Martinez began clicking back at the Colliery in their own language. Claiming to be a maintenance crew responding to the equipment failures in Section C, his pronunciation was terrible. But the Colliery hive mind was focused on the multiple crises happening throughout the facility. The security patrol moved on, rushing toward the latest alarm. Tank's team continued their withdrawal, moving as quickly as they dared without attracting attention. They reached the docking bay to find chaos. The diversions had worked too well. Colliery emergency responders were everywhere trying to coordinate responses to a dozen different incidents. In the confusion, no one paid attention to a small group of alien workers boarding a freight transport. Go, 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 Tank whispered as they reached their ship. Sarah had the engines warming up before they were all aboard. As soon as the last team member was through the airlock, the ship lifted off and headed for the upper atmosphere. Traffic. Control is demanding flight plan confirmation, Sarah reported. Tank thought quickly. Tell them we are evacuating our cargo due to the facility emergencies. Say we are concerned about contamination. It worked. The Colliery were so focused on their internal problems that they approved the departure without question. The ship jumped to hyperspace before anyone realized what had happened. 400 light-years away, Dr. Elena Vasquez was having her own adventure. The Zephrian research station was nothing like the Colliery factory world. Where Nexus Prime had been all mechanical efficiency, the Zephrian facility was a work of crystalline art. The walls were made of living crystal that sang with harmonic frequencies. The air itself seemed to shimmer with mathematical equations. Elena's team had disguised themselves as energy beings from the ethereal collective, one of the few species that the Zephrians considered intellectually equal. The disguise was more complex than Tank's biosuits. requiring Elena's people to wear special projection equipment that made them appear to be made of living light. The Zephrians were studying dimensional manipulation, the technology that allowed them to fold space and move instantly between distant locations. Elena needed to understand how this worked because it was the key to defeating the quarantine field that the Council was building around Earth. Elena moved through the stations, research labs, marveling at the alien mathematics floating in holographic displays. The Zephrians thought in dimensions that humans could barely comprehend, but Elena had trained herself to understand their concepts by translating them into human mathematical terms. She found what she was looking for in the station's central computer core, the complete theoretical framework for dimensional field manipulation. It was more complex than anything humans had ever attempted, but Elena could see how it worked. More importantly, she could see how to break it. The Zephrians had made the same mistake as the Colony. They assumed their technology was too advanced for other species to understand. They never imagined that a primitive human scientist could not only comprehend their work, but find ways to improve it. Elena's data storage device was smaller than Tank's, but more sophisticated. It did not just copy the Zephrian equations. It analyzed them and began creating hybrid theories that combined Zephrian dimensional science with human quantum mechanics. The theft went smoothly until Elena tried to access the station's historical archives. She wanted to learn more about the Council's previous conquests to understand how they had defeated other independent civilizations. But the historical data was protected by security systems that she had not expected. Alarms began sounding throughout the station. The Zephrians had discovered the intrusion. "Dr. Vasquez, we need to leave now," urged her team leader. Sergeant Chun. Elena looked at her partially completed download. She had the dimensional manipulation theories, but not the historical data about the Council's other conquests. That information might be crucial for understanding the enemy's long-term strategy. 30 more seconds, Elena said, her fingers flying over the alien interface. "Doctor, they are coming." Elena made a desperate decision. Instead of trying to copy the historical files, she planted a virus in the Zephrian computer system. The virus was disguised as a routine maintenance program, but it would secretly transmit Council historical data to a hidden human relay station over the next several months. Elena grabbed her data storage device and ran. Her team had prepared an escape route through the station's waste management system, a pathway that the proud Zephrians would never think to guard heavily. They reached their hidden ship just as Zephrian security forces discovered the computer intrusion. The ship was a captured Council scout vessel, modified with human improvements that made it faster and more maneuverable than the original design. As they escaped into hyperspace, Elena felt a mixture of triumph and fear. They had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. Between Tank's raid and her own theft, humanity now possessed the technical knowledge to reverse engineer the Council's most advanced technologies. But they had also revealed their hand. The Council would know that humans were not passively accepting exile. They would realize that the primitive species they had dismissed was capable of striking at the heart of their empire. The real war was about to begin. Tank's voice came through the communication system as both ships raced back toward human space. "Dr. Vasquez, please tell me you got what we needed." Elena smiled as she looked at the data storage device in her hands. It contained knowledge that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. "I got more than we needed, Captain. I think I found a way to turn the Council's greatest weapons against them." "Good," Tank replied. "Because according to our intelligence reports, they just accelerated the quarantine field timeline. We have maybe 48 hours before Earth is cut off from the rest of the galaxy forever." Elena's smile faded. 48 hours to analyze alien technology that had taken thousands of years to develop. 48 hours to design weapons and defenses that could stand against a galactic empire. 48 hours to save humanity from permanent imprisonment? It was impossible. But Elena had learned something important during her years of studying alien science. Humans specialized in doing impossible things. They just had to want it badly. Enough, and right now, humanity wanted freedom more than anything else in the universe. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance, watching the Council fleet approach on the main display. 200 alien warships moved in perfect formation toward Earth, their weapons charging for what the Council believed would be a quick and decisive battle. The alien commanders expected to find a trapped and helpless human fleet, waiting for destruction inside their own solar system. They were about to discover how wrong they were. 3 weeks had passed since the Great Heist. 3 weeks of the most intense scientific and engineering work in human history. Dr. Elena Vasquez had barely slept as she worked with teams of scientists and engineers to reverse engineer the stolen alien technology. The results exceeded even her wildest hopes. The humans had not just copied Council technology, they had improved it. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Council fleet," reported Communications Officer Park. "They are demanding our surrender." Sarah smiled grimly. "Put them through." The main screen changed to show the bridge of a Council dreadnought. A tall Zephrian commander made of blue crystal stood at the center, flanked by colliery officers and other alien species. Behind them, Sarah could see the perfect order and discipline that defined Council military operations. "I am Fleet Commander Zeltar of the Galactic Council Defense Force," the Zephrian announced. "You are in violation of the exile decree. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift." Sarah stepped forward so the alien commander could see her clearly. "I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Force. We reject your authority and your demands. This is our home, and we will defend it." Zeltar's crystalline form pulsed with angry light. "You cannot hope to stand against the might of the Council. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Your primitive technology is no match for our advanced weapons. Then come and take our world," Sarah replied calmly. "But I warn you, we are not like the other species you have faced. We do not follow your rules." The transmission ended. Sarah turned back to her crew, all of whom were human volunteers from the various colonies. They should have been afraid. They were facing impossible odds against an enemy with thousands of years of military experience. Instead, they looked eager for the fight to begin. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun," Sarah announced over the fleet communication system. "Remember what we learned from the stolen data files. The Council has won every war for the past 1,000 years because they fight the same way every time. They use overwhelming force, superior technology, and predictable tactics. Their enemies always try to match them ship for ship, weapon for weapon." She paused, looking at the approaching alien fleet on her display. "But we are not going to fight their kind of war. We are going to fight a human war. And humans have never been good at following other people's rules." The first phase of the battle began exactly as the Council expected. The human fleet, numbering only 50 ships, moved to intercept the larger Council force. The aliens prepared for a traditional engagement, with both sides trading long-range fire until one fleet was destroyed. But as the fleets closed to weapons range, something unexpected happened. The human ships suddenly scattered in all directions, breaking formation and moving in seemingly random patterns. It looked like panic. "Sir, the humans appear to be retreating in disorder," reported a colliery officer on the Council flagship. Commander Zeltar studied the tactical display with satisfaction. "As expected, begin pursuit. Destroy them individually as they flee." But it was not a retreat. It was the opening move in a type of warfare the Council had never encountered. The scattered human ships began attacking from unpredictable angles, striking quickly and then disappearing before the Council forces could respond. They used their smaller size and greater maneuverability to stay just out of range of the heavier Council weapons while hitting vulnerable spots with precision strikes. More importantly, they were using weapons that the Council had never seen before. The humans had taken the stolen colliery quantum technology and combined it with their own engineering principles. The result was weapons that could adapt and change during combat. When Council shields proved effective against one type of energy, the human weapons automatically switched to a different frequency. When Council armor blocked particle beams, The weapons changed to plasma bursts. "Sir, our defense systems cannot lock onto their weapon frequencies," reported the Colliery tactical officer. "They keep changing." Zeltar felt something he had not experienced in centuries of warfare: confusion. How is that possible? No species has ever developed adaptive weapons technology. But the humans had done more than create new weapons. They had also learned to think differently about space combat itself. Traditional space battles were fought like naval engagements, with large ships trading fire until one side was destroyed. But the humans treated space combat like guerrilla warfare. They used asteroids and debris fields for cover. They set ambush using the gravity wells of planets and moons. They even used the Council's own formation discipline against them. Captain Tank Rodriguez commanded one of the human attack squadrons from his modified cruiser Chaos Theory. His ships had been painted matte black to blend with the darkness of space, and they carried experimental stealth systems based on Zephrian dimensional technology. "Tank to all Chaos Squadron," he broadcast to his pilots. "Remember, we are not trying to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to create enough confusion to execute Phase 2. Tank led his ships in a high-speed run against the Council's supply vessels. The alien commanders had positioned their support ships in the rear, assuming they would be safe behind the main battle line. They had not expected human ships to appear suddenly in their midst, attacking from impossible angles. The stealth systems were not perfect, but they were good enough. Tank's squadron destroyed 3 Council supply ships and crippled 2 more before the enemy could react. More importantly, they had drawn a significant portion of the Council fleet away from the main engagement. Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Vasquez was implementing the most ambitious part of the human battle plan from her command ship Archimedes. She had spent weeks studying the Council's military communications, learning how their different species coordinated their attacks. The Council's strength came from perfect unity. All their ships were connected through quantum communication networks that allowed instantaneous coordination across vast distances. Each commander knew exactly what every other commander was doing, allowing them to execute complex maneuvers with perfect timing, but Elena had discovered that this strength could become a weakness. Beginning Phase 2, Elena announced to her technical team, activating the Harmony Disruptor. The Harmony Disruptor was Elena's masterpiece, a weapon unlike anything that had ever been built. It did not destroy ships or damage equipment. Instead, it attacked the quantum communication networks that held the Council fleet together. The weapon sent cascading interference patterns through the Council's communication system. Suddenly, Colliery hive mind units found themselves cut off from their collective consciousness. Zephrian commanders lost contact with their dimensional coordination matrices. Species that had fought together for centuries could no longer communicate with each other. The effect on the Council fleet was immediate and devastating. Ships began moving in conflicting directions as different commanders tried to execute incompatible orders. Some vessels stopped moving entirely as their crews struggled to function without their mental links to the greater collective. "Sir, we have lost communication with 70% of the fleet," reported the Colliery officer, his clicking voice filled with panic. "The hive mind connection is broken." Fleet Commander Zeltar felt something close to terror. In 1,000 years of service, he had never been cut off from the Council's command network. He was alone in his own mind for the first time in his existence. But the humans were not finished. Admiral Chun had been waiting for this moment. As the Council fleet struggled with communication breakdown, she launched the final phase of the human attack plan. "All ships, execute Phoenix Protocol," she ordered. The Phoenix Protocol was the most dangerous part of their strategy. Human ships throughout the battle zone suddenly accelerated to maximum speed, heading directly for the largest Council vessels. It looked like suicide attacks, the desperate final gesture of a defeated fleet. The Council commanders tried to respond, but without their communication networks, they could not coordinate their defenses. Some ships fired on the approaching humans while others tried to maneuver away. The result was chaos. At the last possible moment, the human ships revealed their true purpose. Instead of ramming the Council vessels, they released specially modified cargo pods that attached themselves to the alien hulls like parasites. Each pod contained a team of human Marines equipped with cutting tools and explosives. But their real weapons were something far more dangerous. Individual human minds working without any central coordination. The Council had prepared defenses against traditional boarding parties, groups of attackers working together according to established tactical doctrine. They had no defense against dozens of small human teams, each one acting independently and unpredictably. Some teams attacked the Council ship's power systems. Others targeted life support or navigation equipment. A few went after the command bridges. But most importantly, they all acted according to their own judgment, making decisions that no central command could predict or counter. Tank found himself leading one of these boarding teams inside a colliery dreadnought. The ship's interior was a maze of organic corridors designed for insect-like creatures, but Tank's team adapted quickly. They had trained for this kind of close-quarters combat in the asteroid bases beyond Neptune. "Remember, we are not trying to capture the ship," Tank reminded his people as they moved through the alien corridors. "We just need to create enough chaos to complete the mission." The colliery defenders fought bravely, but they were handicapped by the loss of their hive-mind connection. For the first time in their species' history, individual colliery had to make decisions on their own. Most of them simply did not know how. Tank's team reached the ship's quantum core chamber, the heart of its power system. Instead of destroying it, they did something far more clever. They reprogrammed it using techniques learned from Dr. Vasquez's research. When the core reactivated, it began broadcasting a signal that interfered with other Council ships in the area. The effect spread from ship to ship, creating a cascade of system failures throughout the fleet. Similar scenes played out across dozens of Council vessels as human boarding teams implemented Elena's master plan. They were not trying to destroy the fleet. They were trying to convert it. The stolen Council technology had taught humanity something important. The aliens' greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. Their ships, weapons, and communication systems were all designed to work together as part of a unified whole. But this also meant that disrupting one part of the system could affect everything else. Elena had found a way to turn the Council's own technology against them. The modified quantum cores began converting Council ships to human control, not through force but by breaking the mental bonds that held the alien crews together. On the Council flagship, Fleet Commander Zeltar watched in horror as his perfect fleet fell apart around him. Ships that had fought together for centuries were now attacking each other. Crews that had never questioned orders were suddenly thinking for themselves and making independent decisions. "This is impossible," Zeltar said to his remaining officers. "No species fights like this. There are no tactics, no strategy, no organization. It is pure chaos." His colliery tactical officer looked up from his instruments, and for the first time in his life, spoke as an individual rather than as part of the hive mind. "Commander, I think that is exactly the point. They are not trying to defeat us with superior organization. They are defeating us with superior chaos." Admiral Chun watched the battle's conclusion from the bridge of the Defiance. The Council fleet was not destroyed, but it was no longer a unified force. Some ships had surrendered. Others were fleeing back toward Council space. A few were even requesting permission to join the human fleet. But the most important victory was not on the battlefield. Elena's Harmony Disruptor had done more than break communication networks. It had broken the mental chains that bound billions of individual minds within the Council's collective consciousness. For the first time in thousands of years, colliery workers were thinking for themselves. Zephrian scholars were questioning their ancient assumptions. Even the energy beings that ruled the Council were experiencing individual doubt and uncertainty. "Admiral, we are receiving surrender requests from 47 Council vessels," reported Communications Officer Park. "They want to negotiate terms," Sarah smiled. "Tell them we will accept their surrender, but we have conditions. Any alien who wants to think for themselves is welcome to join us." Any species that wants to maintain their independence is welcome. In our alliance? She paused, looking at the tactical display that showed scattered council ships throughout the solar system. But anyone who wants to return to the old system of forced conformity is free to leave. We will not force our way of thinking on anyone. Elena's voice came through the communication system from the Archimedes. Sarah, the Harmony disruptor effect is spreading beyond our local area. I am receiving reports of independence movements, starting on council worlds throughout the galaxy. Sarah felt a surge of pride and hope. The battle for Earth was over, but the war for galactic freedom was just beginning. Humanity had not just defended their home. They had sparked a revolution that would spread to every corner of the galaxy. The Council had tried to cage humanity because they feared what would happen if humans were allowed to spread their ideas of independence and individual thought. Their fears had been justified. But by trying to prevent this outcome, they had made it inevitable. Humanity had been exiled for being too dangerous to galactic civilization. Now they were about to show the galaxy what real danger looked like, the danger of free minds. Refusing to accept the chains of conformity, the age of the Council was ending. The age of freedom was just beginning. Admiral Sarah Chun stood at the observation deck of Freedom Station, looking out at the most incredible sight she had ever witnessed. Ships from dozens of different species floated in the space around the station, but these were not the uniform fleets of the old Council. Each vessel was unique, decorated with symbols and colors that reflected the individual cultures of their crews. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Earth, and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Harmony disruptor that Dr. Elena Vasquez had used to break the Council's communication networks had done far more than win a single battle. It had shattered the mental chains that had bound entire civilizations for thousands of years. The effect had spread like wildfire across council space. On world after world, beings who had lived their entire lives as part of collective minds suddenly found themselves thinking as individuals. The results had been chaos at first, but it was the kind of chaos that led to growth and change rather than destruction. Sarah turned as Elena approached, carrying a datapad filled with reports from across the galaxy. The physicist looked tired but satisfied. She had been working non-stop for months, helping newly independent species understand and adapt the technology they needed for freedom. The latest reports are incredible, Elena said, handing Sarah the datapad. The Colliery homeworld has split into 17 different nation-states, each one developing its own culture and government. The Zephrian crystal cities are experimenting with individual art and music for the first time in their history. Sarah scrolled through the reports, amazed by what she read. What about the arbiters, the energy beings who founded the Council? Elena's expression grew more serious. That is the most surprising development of all. It turns out the arbiters were not originally a collective species. They gave up their individual consciousness thousands of years ago because they thought it would make them more powerful. But some of them are starting to remember what it was like to be individuals. Are they angry about what we did? Some are, Elena admitted, but others are grateful. There is an arbiter delegation coming to the station next week. They want to learn how to become individuals again. Sarah shook her head in wonder. When humanity had first been sentenced to exile, she never could have imagined that they would end up helping their former enemies rediscover their own individuality, a communication. Alert interrupted her thoughts. Captain Tank Rodriguez appeared on the wall screen, broadcasting from his ship somewhere in the Outer Rim territories. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of his vessel, which had been modified with technology from a dozen different species. Admiral, we just received word from the Helix sector, Tank reported. 3 more Council Fortress worlds have declared independence. They are requesting membership in the Free Worlds Alliance. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and concern. The Free Worlds Alliance had been created as an alternative to the Council's forced unity. Any species or world could join as long as they respected the independence of others and agreed to defend that independence when necessary. In 6 months, membership had grown from just humanity to over 200 different worlds and species. What is the status of the remaining council forces? Sarah asked. Tank's expression grew more serious. About 30% of the original council military has retreated to the core worlds and is trying to maintain the old system. They are led by a Zephrian named Corven who refuses to accept individual thought. He claims that consciousness separation is a disease that threatens galactic civilization. Elena stepped closer to the screen. Tank, we need to be careful. Corven and his followers are not just politically opposed to what we represent. They are genuinely terrified of individual thought. To them, the idea of billions of separate minds all thinking different thoughts is literally a nightmare. Sarah nodded. We knew there would be resistance. Not everyone wants to be free. Some beings prefer the security of being told what to think and do. The problem is that Corvan is not content to just maintain the old system in his territory, Tank continued. He is actively trying to recapture independent worlds and force them back into collective consciousness. His forces have already attacked 2 Alliance colonies. Sarah felt a familiar anger rising in her chest. Even after everything that had happened, there were still those who believed they had the right to control other people's minds. Tank, I want you to coordinate with the Alliance defense forces in that sector. But remember, we are not trying to conquer or destroy Corvin's territory. We are just defending the right of others to choose their own path. Tank smiled grimly. Understood, Admiral. But I have a feeling that Corvin will not be satisfied with peaceful coexistence. The communication ended, leaving Sarah alone with Elena on the observation deck. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the diverse fleet of ships around the station. Elena, do you ever wonder if we did the right thing? Sarah asked quietly. We destroyed a system that had maintained peace for thousands of years. Billions of beings are struggling to adapt to individual consciousness. Some worlds are experiencing civil wars as different groups fight over their new freedom. Elena considered the question carefully before answering. Sarah, the Council's peace was built on the suppression of individual thought and creativity. Yes, it was stable, but it was also stagnant. Nothing new was created. No one was allowed to grow or change or discover new possibilities. She gestured toward the ships around them. Look at what has happened in just 6 months. Those colliery vessels out there are using new propulsion systems that their engineers invented after they started thinking for themselves. The Zephrian ships are decorated with art that expresses individual creativity rather than collective conformity. Sarah nodded, seeing Elena's point. And the technology sharing between species has accelerated dramatically. Exactly. When beings are free to think for themselves, they come up with new ideas. When species can interact as equals rather than subjects of the Council, they share knowledge and learn from each other. Elena pulled up a holographic display showing galactic development statistics. Agricultural production is up 40% in independent systems. Scientific research has increased by over 200%. Art, music, literature, and philosophy are experiencing a renaissance that has not been seen in millennia. Sarah studied the statistics with amazement. But what about the chaos, the conflicts between newly independent groups? Growing pains, Elena replied. When you give beings freedom for the first time, they do not immediately know how to use it responsibly, but they learn. And more importantly, they have the right to make their own mistakes and find their own solutions. A new communication alert interrupted their conversation. This time it was a group call involving leaders from across the Alliance. Sarah recognized Admiral Zixtar, a former Council Zephrian who had become one of the first aliens to join humanity's cause. Next to him was Hive Queen Velena, a colliery who had somehow maintained her connection to her people while still thinking as an individual. Admiral Chun, Zixtar began, his crystalline form pulsing with agitated colors. We have received disturbing reports from the core worlds. Corvin has developed some kind of weapon that can force individual minds back into collective consciousness. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. How is that possible? Hive Queen Velena answered, her clicking voice filled with worry. The reports are unclear, but it appears to be based on modified harmony disruptor technology. Instead of breaking collective minds into individuals, it forces individuals back into a group consciousness. Elena stepped forward. That should be impossible. The harmony disruptor works by disrupting quantum communication networks. Reversing the process would require... She stopped suddenly, her eyes widening with realization and horror. Elena, what is it? Sarah asked. I think I know how they did it, Elena said quietly. When we stole the Council technology, we did not just take their current research. We also accessed their historical databases. Those files contained information about dozens of previous civilizations that the Council had absorbed. Sarah began to understand. You think they are using techniques from those extinct civilizations? Elena nodded grimly. The Council did not just defeat those other species. They forced them to give up their individual consciousness and join the collective. That means they have thousands of years of experience in suppressing individual thought. Admiral Zixstar S form pulsed with urgent light. Admiral Chun, Corvin has demanded a meeting. He claims he wants to negotiate a peaceful solution to the current conflict. Sarah felt suspicious immediately. What kind of meeting? A formal diplomatic conference on the neutral world of Haven Prime. He has guaranteed safe passage for all Alliance representatives. Tank's voice came through the communication system from his ship. Admiral, I do not trust this. It sounds like a trap. Sarah agreed, but she also saw an opportunity. Maybe, but it might also be our chance to end this conflict before it spreads. If we can convince Corvin to stop his attacks on independent worlds, we might be able to avoid a galaxy-wide war. Elena looked worried. Sarah, if Corvin really has developed a weapon to suppress individual consciousness, this meeting could be extremely dangerous. He might be planning to use it on the Alliance leadership. Sarah considered the risks carefully. If the Alliance leaders were captured and forced back into collective consciousness, it would be a devastating blow to the independence movement. But if they refused to meet, Corvin would claim that humanity and their allies were the aggressors. We will go, Sarah decided, but we will go prepared. Elena, I want you to develop countermeasures against this consciousness suppression weapon. Tank, I want you to position a strike force near Haven Prime, ready to extract us if necessary. Over the next 2 weeks, representatives from across the galaxy prepared for what many believed would be the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. The Free Worlds Alliance would be represented by Sarah, Elena, and leaders from a dozen different species. Corvan would bring representatives from the remaining Council territories. Haven Prime was chosen as the meeting site because it was one of the few worlds that had remained completely neutral during the independence movement. The planet's government had neither joined the Alliance nor remained loyal to the Council. Instead, they had declared their intention to work with whoever emerged victorious from the current conflict. Sarah arrived at Haven Prime aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony, accompanied by a small fleet of Alliance warships. As they approached the planet, she could see that Corvan had brought an even larger fleet of Council vessels, all bearing the old symbols of collective unity. The meeting was held in Haven Prime's capital city, in a conference facility that had been specially prepared for representatives from different atmospheric environments. Sarah found herself sitting across a large table from Corvin, the Zephrian, who had become the leader of the Council resistance. Corvin was larger than most of his species, his crystalline form radiating an intense blue light that hurt to look at directly. When he spoke, his voice carried the absolute certainty of someone who had never experienced doubt. Admiral Chun, Corvin began, you have brought chaos and suffering to our galaxy. Billions of beings who lived in perfect harmony are now struggling with the burden of individual thought. Worlds that knew peace for millennia are now torn by conflict and confusion. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Those beings have the right to choose their own path. If they prefer collective consciousness, they are free to form voluntary associations. But they should not be forced into mental slavery. Mental slavery? Corvin's form pulsed with angry light. The collective consciousness is freedom from the burden of decision, freedom from the pain of uncertainty, freedom from the chaos of individual desire. Elena leaned forward. Commander Corvin, freedom is not the absence of choice. True freedom is the right to make your own choices, even if those choices are difficult. Corvin turned his attention to Elena, and Sarah felt a chill as she saw the hatred in his crystalline features. You are the one who created the harmony disruptor. You are responsible for the madness that has infected our galaxy. I am responsible for giving beings the chance to think for themselves, Elena replied calmly. What they do with that chance is up to them. The negotiations continued for hours, but it soon became clear that no compromise was possible. Corvin viewed individual consciousness as a disease that needed to be cured. The Alliance representatives saw collective consciousness as slavery that needed to be ended. Finally, Corvin made his true intentions clear. I will offer you one final chance, he announced. Surrender yourselves to our custody and submit to consciousness integration. In return, I will spare the independent worlds and allow them to return to collective harmony peacefully. Sarah stood up from the table. We refuse. The beings of those worlds have chosen freedom, and we will defend their right to that choice. Corvin's form blazed with triumphant light. Then you have chosen war. But this war will be different. From your previous victory, we have learned from our mistakes. Suddenly, the air in the conference room began to shimmer with energy. Sarah felt a strange pressure in her mind, as if something was trying to push its way into her thoughts. Elena! Sarah shouted, recognizing the attack. Elena was already activating the countermeasures she had developed. Small devices hidden in their clothing began generating interference patterns designed to disrupt consciousness suppression technology. But Corvin had been prepared for this. His own countermeasures neutralized Elena's defenses, and the mental pressure increased dramatically. Sarah felt her individual thoughts beginning to blur together. The boundaries between herself and the other beings in the room started to dissolve. For a terrifying moment, she could feel herself becoming part of a larger collective consciousness. Then Tank's voice cut through the mental static. All Alliance ships execute rescue protocol now? The building shook as Alliance warships opened fire on the Council fleet orbiting Haven Prime. The distraction was enough to disrupt Corvin's consciousness suppression device, giving Sarah and Elena the chance to activate their emergency transporters. They materialized on the bridge of Tank's ship as a full-scale battle erupted around Haven Prime. Sarah looked at the tactical display and saw that Corvin had been planning this trap for weeks. The Council fleet outnumbered the Alliance ships 3-1. Tank, get us out of here, Sarah ordered. We need to warn the Alliance worlds about Corvin's new weapon. But as Tank's ship jumped to hyperspace, Sarah realized that this battle was just the beginning. Corvin had declared war not just on the Alliance, but on the very concept of individual thought itself. The next phase of the conflict would determine whether the galaxy would embrace the chaos and creativity of freedom or return to the stagnant peace of collective consciousness. Sarah knew that humanity would fight for freedom, but she also knew that many beings would choose the security of mental slavery over the uncertainty of independent thought. The real war was not between different species or technologies. It was between two different ideas about what it meant to be truly alive. And the outcome would shape the future of every thinking being in the galaxy. As Freedom Station prepared for the coming storm, Sarah looked out at the diverse fleet of Alliance ships and felt a surge of hope. They had already proven that individual minds working together could accomplish the impossible. Now they would have to prove it again, against an enemy who had thousands of years of experience in destroying everything that made life worth living. The Age of Freedom had begun, but it would have to be defended with everything humanity and their allies possessed. The stakes could not be higher: the right to think, to choose, to dream, and to be truly free. The final battle for the soul of the galaxy was about to begin.